I've been playing Escape from Tarkov for years now, and I absolutely love it. Nothing comes close to the adrenaline rush you get during these tense situations, and nothing is as rewarding as making it out alive against all the odds. There is really only one logical step to make something like Tarkov even more immersive, bringing it from the flat screen to VR. And that is exactly what Combat Waffle Studios did about a year ago with Ghosts of Tabor. Now you're the one fumbling to get a magazine into your gun while you're under fire. You're the one diving for cover and hastily applying that bandage while you slowly bleed out. You're the one meticulously sorting your stash, and you're the one that truly has to do everything to make it out alive. Now, Ghosts of Tabor is nowhere near a one-to-one copy of something like Escape from Tarkov, but the inspiration is clear in many ways, and ever since I heard about this game, I have been itching to try it out. So after about 1,700 hours of Tarkov, I was eager to see how I would fare in this entirely new arena. Obviously, things like my aim and my ability to perform basic actions like reloads and chamber checks wouldn't carry over, and with only a few hours of VR experience under my belt, I would be severely disadvantaged in that regard, but I was curious to see which concepts and methods I've picked up while playing Tarkov would apply to this game as well. And with the power of hindsight, I can safely say they don't carry over well, or at least they don't carry over yet for me, with where I am currently both knowledge and skill-wise in the game. There are a couple things I will talk about in regards to it later, but for now I think it's best if I just tell the tale of my first few raids in Tabor. Anyways, I was dying to get to a match as quickly as possible, so I didn't even build much of a kit. I just grabbed a PM pistol with one mag and figured I'd find everything else I'd need along the way while I got my bearings. But before we get into this first raid, I am very happy to announce that this video is sponsored by XR Game Labs and Combat Waffle Studios, making this the first ever sponsored video on this channel. Ghosts of Tabor, made by Combat Waffle Studios, is a VR PvPvE extraction shooter heavily inspired by games like Tarkov and DayZ, where you will spend your time exploring the maps, fighting other players, looting and completing quests, all to level up traders and build a more expansive hideout. Leveling up your traders will give you access to more advanced equipment, and upgrading your bunker provides you with more space to store your gear and more ways to make money. There are some really cool gear customization options like the modular armor and rig system, which allows you to customize your loadout to suit your needs, and you can pretty much do all of it in raid as well, which is really cool. You can gear up and try to survive solo, or you can join up to 2 friends to play as a team. Anyways, Ghosts of Tabor is moving to the official MetaQuest store tomorrow, Thursday, February 8th. If you have a headset and are interested in extraction shooters, Ghosts of Tabor is definitely worth checking out. There will be a link to the store page in the description, and of course I'd like to give a massive thank you to XR Game Labs for reaching out on behalf of Combat Waffle Studios to sponsor today's video. I do also want to quickly mention that I am very new to recording VR, and I ran into my fair share of issues along the way, and a lot of the stuff unfortunately isn't stabilized because I couldn't get that to work until later in the play session. So in a lot of ways this video is kind of an experiment, but I did do my best to make things work, and I hope it's still enjoyable. But apologies in advance for any roughness with the footage, and it's something that I will work on in future projects as I upload more VR content. And so there I was, my first raid had begun. I found myself on the beach of the island of Tabor. I had no idea where I was on the island or what to expect, so I decided to move for the nearby buildings to see if I could find anything useful. I couldn't carry most of it, but I did find a little chest rig and a pouch that I could attach to it, along with a bolt-action rifle. And after confirming that the rifle was indeed loaded, I got ready to move out. But I was about to meet one of the locals, a member of a rebel group called Phoenix. These enemies are fighting to survive and are functionally the same as Tarkov scavs. I wasn't having any luck with the bolt action, so I decided to swap to the pistol I had brought in. The Phoenix was finally down and I had made a lot of noise, so I wanted to vacate the area quickly. He didn't have much of value, just another PM, so I grabbed it and got moving. I made a few pit stops to loot as I wandered aimlessly through the area, and eventually I came upon a large compound. I wanted to explore it, but there would surely be enemies inside, so I'd have to be very careful. Another Phoenix was down, and after a quick reload, I moved farther into the compound. There were some more pouches for my rig and another rifle, as well as a tiny bit of much-needed water. After poking around a little bit more, I bumped into another scavenger, likely drawn to the area from my previous gunshots. It finally crossed my mind that I probably shouldn't be re-peeking the same angles, so I moved into the second floor of the building. This time, the dead scav had something of interest. It was an odd little SMG, but it was worth carrying with me, and I had a pouch I could store an extra mag in. But at this point, I was pretty low on health, and I was getting dangerously close to starvation and dehydration, so it was time to try and find an exit. I wandered fairly aimlessly, vaguely following some of the markers on my compass, when I stumbled across another large building. I could see some enemies in the windows, so I had to stay down and be careful. I had no idea where my exit was, and I knew I was running out of time, so I made a push for the building. Hopefully there would be food and water inside. I was dangerously close to death, and it felt like my only option was to push forward into this fight. Maybe one of the enemies would have some food or meds on them. It was a miracle that I was still alive, but time was working against me. I wasn't sure what to do, but then I spotted something. A player had died at the base of the hill, and I could see a bag. There was a chance he had food or water or something to heal with, and I knew I had to go for it. I was in the final stages of both starvation and dehydration, and I was now suffering constant damage. I knew I wouldn't last long, so I desperately rifled through the bag, but there was nothing. I knew my fate was sealed. I took a little break after that raid to give my brain a rest. I was getting a bit of a headache because I wasn't used to VR, but after it passed, I was ready to jump back in. I decided to visit the Tabor market, a place to browse the traders' wares and buy equipment for future outings. The first logical goal I wanted to achieve was to extract from a raid successfully. This time, however, I decided to try a different map, Missile Silo. Silo is a cramped, close-quarters location, so I would be much more likely to run into other players, but I figured I'd have an easier time finding an exit. So I kitted up with a Glock, a rig with some extra mags, and a simple sling bag so that I could hopefully pick up any loot that I found. I had arrived at the cramped tunnels that served as my entrance to the silo, and I already wasn't liking the vibe. It was dark and too close quarters for my liking, and I knew danger could be lurking around any corner. I had managed to kill another real player and one of the local scavengers. After kind of regrouping and briefly looting the area, I found this Tommy gun and I was ready to move upstairs and begin looking for a way out. In addition to the Thompson, I had found an SKS that I now had on my sling, so I really wanted to leave with the loot and the player kill under my belt, but it seemed like everywhere I went led to a dead end. At one point, I had been following a narrow passage for some distance when I came upon what looked like a potential exit, but unfortunately it wasn't active during this raid, so I had to head back in the other direction and look elsewhere. I had nearly met my end to a Phoenix because I had messed with the firing switch on the Thompson and had accidentally left it on safe, but I managed to recover and now it seemed like the road to my exit was open. The last corner was clear and I was now extracting. I was very glad to be out of the claustrophobic environment, and once back in the safety of my bunker, I unloaded and prepared for my next outing. I decided to go back to the island with the SKS I had pulled out of the missile silo, and luckily I was able to buy an extra mag for it at the market. I also grabbed some food and water so that I wouldn't fall victim to the same mistakes I had made previously. With this only being my second raid on the island, I still had no idea where I was, so I decided to just move for the nearest landmark, which was a large lighthouse on the hill above me. After taking out the two scavs, I moved in and began looting the tower. I had lost a lot of health in the fight, so I was hoping to find some meds inside, but I had no such luck. There were some guns, however, a grenade, a few random odds and ends, as well as an M4 close to the very top. To free up some of the space in my bag, I decided to eat and drink before grabbing the M4 and heading back down. At this point, I didn't have much of a plan, but that would change quickly as I spotted a player moving up the hill towards me. I pushed for the tree to my front right, hoping to catch him if he tried to move more up the hill in my direction. After missing him so much, I felt it was best to back off, plus I couldn't really afford to take any more hits, so I began to run for what I thought was an exit. I had quite a ways to go, and as I crossed the barren stretch of beach, I felt super exposed, but I was close to safety now. Suddenly, all of my hopes were dashed as I saw movement in front of me. I thought he had seen me for sure, so I rushed for the cover of the large rock between us. I had landed a super lucky shot on him, so I rushed forward to see what he had. Normally I'd take my time, but I was dehydrated and super close to an exit, so I just wanted to grab his stuff quickly and go. He looked more geared than me, so I just threw down my SKS and rig so I could change in his gear. Luckily I realized I could still hold my bag in my offhand, so with pretty much all of the important stuff secured, I made a break for the dock. It may not seem like much to seasoned Tabor players, but this was another huge win for me. 2 raids, 2 player kills, 2 survives. Things were looking up. I had a slight mental breakdown back in my hideout trying to sort my loot, but on the bright side it seemed like I was getting the hang of the game. I was ready to get back to it, and I thought maybe I'd get some more kills, have some good raids, and overall be successful. Oh, how wrong I was. I had died a ton, lots more than what I could show here, but despite the deaths and some technical difficulties with recording, I still had a lot of fun. Sadly, my biggest play of the night, where I killed an enemy duo, happened to fall right in the middle of the footage that didn't record with audio, so I wasn't really able to work it into the video. But overall, I think I need a lot more experience in the game to determine whether or not my methods and practices from Tarkov carry over well to Ghosts of Tabor. I think in theory some of it definitely does, like moving bags and other loot off of dead enemies into safer areas for sorting, or leaving scavenger enemies alive when looting an area so that they'll fight other players that show up. But I'm kind of just having skill and knowledge issues. I'm just not good enough to actually put a lot of those ideas into play. But I think that my many hours of Tarkov did help me feel at home with many of the concepts that the game presents, and I think it helped me know when to cut my losses and run from a fight in the name of survival, that kind of stuff. The rest of the night actually wasn't all bad deaths though. I did have a really fun skirmish with the AWM that I had taken from the dude at the dock, and during my very last raid I found a purple key card and I managed to survive with it, so I'll have to go back and open a loot room with it some other time. I am very glad to finally have gotten to play Ghosts of Tabor, as, like I said earlier, I've had my eye on it for quite a while now. I had a lot of fun, it definitely got the blood flowing more than once, and it's a game I look forward to exploring more in the future when I'm not so pressed for time. Once again, Ghosts of Tabor is moving to the official MetaQuest store tomorrow, February 8th, and there will be a link to it in the description down below. I also want to give a massive thank you once again to XR Game Labs and Combat Waffle Studios for sponsoring today's video. I think that's about all from me though. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and as always, remember to take care of yourself and have a good night.